Inspired by a true story, names and some identifying details have been changed to protect the people involved. There are nights when people go out to celebrate. There are nights when people go out because they are lonely. And then there are nights when someone walks into a room having already decided that tomorrow does not need to include them. For Daniel, it was that kind of night. He had not gone to the comedy show because he needed entertainment. He had gone because he did not want to be alone. For almost 15 years, Daniel had believed he understood his life. He had a wife, a home, 2 beautiful daughters, a career that paid the bills, a family photograph in the hallway, the kind of ordinary life that nobody writes stories about because ordinary happiness rarely announces itself. Then everything began to unravel. It started with suspicion, small inconsistencies, messages that disappeared, phone calls taken outside, answers that came too quickly. Daniel tried to dismiss it. He told himself that suspicion could destroy a marriage just as quickly as infidelity could. But eventually, the truth arrived. His wife had been unfaithful. That revelation was devastating enough. But it opened another door. And behind that door waited something Daniel could never have imagined. Questions were raised about the children. He fought the thought. Those were his daughters. He had held them when they were babies. He had sat beside hospital beds. He had attended school meetings. He knew which one hated tomatoes. He knew which one pretended not to be afraid of thunderstorms. He knew their birthdays better than he remembered his own appointments. But eventually, the questions became too loud to ignore. DNA tests were done. Daniel waited for the results, believing that whatever else had been taken from him, at least this part of his life would remain untouched. The results said otherwise. Neither girl was biologically his. Daniel read the report several times. The words did not change. He sat in his car afterwards for almost an hour. People walked past him carrying groceries, answering phones, complaining about traffic. The world continued. That offended him somehow. How could the world continue when his had just stopped? The divorce that followed was brutal. The woman he had once planned to grow old with became someone he barely recognized. Every conversation became an argument. Every memory became evidence. Every possession became something to divide. The house went. The marriage went. Much of the money went. And because the relationship with the children became complicated by the divorce, Daniel felt as though fatherhood itself had been placed on a courtroom table and dissected. But there was still one more betrayal waiting. His wife eventually began a relationship with the lawyer who had been involved in the divorce. Later, they married. Whether rationally or not, Daniel experienced that as the final humiliation. His marriage was gone. His home was gone. The certainty of his fatherhood was gone. And now, even the man connected to the legal process had become part of the life Daniel believed had been stolen from him. He stopped answering calls. He stopped visiting friends. He stopped explaining how he felt because explanations required energy he no longer had. People told him familiar things. You have to move on. Everything happens for a reason. Be strong. You will find someone else. They meant well. But Daniel did not need another sentence beginning with, "You should." He was tired, not the tiredness that sleep fixes. The other kind. The kind that makes tomorrow feel like an obligation. Then one Saturday evening, an old friend persuaded him to attend a comedy show. Daniel refused twice. On the third invitation, he agreed. Perhaps he simply wanted the friend to stop asking. He sat near the back, arms folded, face expressionless. Around him, people laughed before the comedian had even finished some of his sentences. Daniel watched them almost resentfully. How could people be this happy? Then the comedian changed direction. He began talking about his own life. He joked about his marriage collapsing. The audience laughed. Daniel didn't. The comedian spoke about losing his house after the separation. A few people shouted from the audience. Daniel moved slightly forward in his chair. Then the comedian joked about discovering that the person he trusted most had been living another life behind his back. Daniel stopped looking at the floor. The comedian described sleeping in somebody else's spare room after once owning a beautiful home. He joked about carrying his possessions in plastic bags while still dressing nicely enough for people to think he was successful. The room exploded with laughter. And against his will, Daniel smiled. Just slightly. Then the comedian said something that hit him differently. He said, "At one point, I had lost my wife, my house, my money, and half my furniture. I looked at what was left and thought, this life is finished." Then I realized something. If life was finished, why was I still getting bills? The audience erupted. Daniel laughed. A real laugh. The kind that catches you by surprise. The comedian continued. He spoke about betrayal, debt, humiliation, starting again when everybody already knew you had fallen. He turned pain into jokes without pretending the pain had never existed. And Daniel began to notice something extraordinary. The comedian's story was not identical to his, but it was close enough. In some respects, the man on stage had lost even more. Yet there he was, standing under bright lights, laughing, making hundreds of other people laugh. Living. Daniel had spent months believing that his circumstances were proof that his life was over. But here was another wounded man using the ruins of his own life as material. Not because the ruins were funny, but because somehow he had survived them long enough to laugh again. Daniel later described that moment as though someone had opened a window in a room he had forgotten was dark. Nothing had changed. His marriage was still over. The DNA results were still real. The house was still gone. His former wife had still moved on. Tomorrow morning, every problem waiting for him before the comedy show would still be waiting. But something else would also be there tomorrow. Daniel. For months, he had been asking, what is left? That night, he asked a different question. What can I still build with what is left? He stayed until the end of the show. People around him stood, gathered their jackets, and walked toward the exits. Daniel remained seated for a moment. He looked at the empty stage. A few hours earlier, he had believed that continuing was pointless. Now he was thinking about breakfast. Such an ordinary thought. Breakfast. But sometimes life returns quietly, not with thunder, not with revelation, not with every problem suddenly disappearing. Sometimes life returns because, for the first time in months, you find yourself wondering what you will eat tomorrow. Daniel walked outside. He called someone he trusted. He did not tell them everything that night. He simply said, "I don't want to be alone." That sentence became the beginning, not of a perfect life, of another life. There were still difficult days. There were still questions about fatherhood that DNA could answer biologically, but not emotionally. Because whatever a laboratory said, years of birthday cakes, scraped knees, school runs, and bedtime conversations did not simply disappear from Daniel's heart. There was counseling. There were angry days. There were lonely Sundays. There were moments when progress felt imaginary. But there were also new mornings, new friendships, new reasons to laugh. And slowly, Daniel discovered something he could not have believed while sitting alone with that DNA report. A life can collapse without a person having to collapse with it. Years later, he could tell the story differently. Not because the betrayal became acceptable. It didn't. Not because losing his family stopped hurting. It hadn't. But because the ending he once imagined for himself was no longer the ending of the story. And perhaps that is why this story matters. Somewhere tonight, someone may be sitting inside a problem they believe is bigger than their remaining life. They may have lost a marriage, a business, a reputation, a home, a relationship, something they thought they could never live without. Daniel would probably never tell that person that everything will magically become all right. He knows better than that. But he might tell them this: do not make a permanent decision while standing inside a chapter you have not finished reading. Because the strange thing about tomorrow is that you cannot see from today what might be waiting there. For Daniel, it was a comedian, a stage, a room full of strangers, and one joke that made him laugh long enough to remember that he was still alive. Sometimes the problem does not disappear. Sometimes you simply discover that the problem is not the whole story.